Okay, we're live.
You ready to go? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee meeting this evening. Do we have any apologies? Councillor Stoops. Anybody else?
Also, Councillor Proctor and Councillor Hutton is substituting.
Yeah. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest on any of the items on the agenda? No. Okay, thank you. None. Okay, then item 3, then the minutes of the previous meeting, which you can find on pages 3 to 6 of the agenda. Does anybody have any issues in relation to those?
Can I move that we accept those as fair and correct?
Yep. Okay, thank you. Item 4 then, the external audit. Some of you may have a pack that's got these already included. Most of us have got them as a separate document. And we have Hawk from Grant Thornton who's going to go through these with us. Thank you.
Hello. So I'd just like to introduce myself first. My name is Hawk Malvade, or people refer to me as Hawk. I'm an audit manager at Grant Thornton and will be the incoming audit manager on the audit to replace Paul Harvey, who was previously the audit manager. I'd just like to send apologies on behalf of Andy Smith, who was due to attend as the director on the audit. However, is unfortunately unwell. So he did produce the 2 reports today and was due to present them. So any questions I'll do my best to respond to, but anything I'm unable to answer, I'll take back to Andy and can circulate responses with the audit committee if necessary. So we've got 2 reports to present today. So we'll start with the Inform the Audit Risk Assessment document, if that's okay. So we're going to take this report as read, but to give some context, under the auditing standards, we have a responsibility to communicate to the Audit and Standards Committee as those charged with governance. So the purpose of this report is to show the effective two-way communication, which helps Grant Thornton to understand developments at the council, and also the Audit and Standards Committee to develop a constructive working relationship. So we've asked management to provide responses on a number of topics, including fraud, laws and regulations, related parties, and going concerns. So this was the most effective way for us to get responses to a number of queries that we have, which will help inform our audit plan, which is the other item on the agenda. So we'd like to thank the management for their comprehensive responses, and based on the responses, nothing has come to our attention that would develop additional audit risks this year, and everything is in line with our communications and our expectations with the council. So for this report, we'd just like to ask the audit committee if they're happy with the responses, or if there's anything else they'd like to make us aware of.
Does anybody have any questions or comments to make? No? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the audit plan then. So this was based on our knowledge of the council, the Inform the Audit Risk Assessment responses, and our previous year audits. So again, we're going to take this report as read, but I can just summarize some of the key headlines. So on page 5, we briefly discussed the significant risks and the materiality levels, which I'll move on to in a bit more detail shortly. We propose to complete the audit between July to November. We hope to be done sooner than that in October. However, we do have the contingency until November. So just moving on to the significant risks that we've identified and we'll be focusing our audit work on this year. So on to page 8 of the document. As part of the audit standards, we are required to consider the need for significant risk around income and expenditure. However, based on our findings, we do not consider that necessary due to there being little incentive at the council to commit fraud and the good culture and ethical framework in place. So we have not considered income or expenditure as significant risks and have rebutted those. We have identified 3 significant risks, and just to make it clear, these are across the board for all local governments, so they all have the same risk. It's not specific based on any findings from previous years. So the 3 risks we've identified: one is management override of control, where we'll be testing the journals and the effectiveness of the controls in place. So there's no potential for management override of control. This is a mandatory risk, and we're not able to rebut this one. So again, just to make it clear that this isn't based on any findings from previous years. The other 2 areas are the valuation of land and building, including investment property, and also the valuation of the pension liability. The reasons for these, again, are that these are the 2 largest estimates in the accounts, so therefore will be considered significant risk given the value. Moving on to page 15, this refers to our materiality. So again, this is consistent with prior year, which we've considered as 2% of the gross operating costs at the council. So the materiality this year will be 1.2 million, but the level we set up reporting to Audit and Standards Committee will be £60,000. We do have a separate materiality level set for senior officer remuneration, which, although is not material to the accounts, we consider it material and sensitivity. So that has been set at £18,000. We do our work to a lower materiality level, which is 70% of the headline materiality. So just to give context, in the prior year audit, we had set this at a lower level for the valuation of property, plant and equipment, and also investment properties at 65% due to the errors found in 1920. However, given the positive opinion last year, we have increased the materiality percentage, so we don't consider it a specific risk anymore. And that was all, I believe. So I'd just like to welcome any questions, if anyone has questions relating to the audit plan.
Thank you, Hawk. Anybody, any questions? No? No? Excellent. Thank you, Hawk. We'll
Thank you, Chair.
move on in that case. Item number 5 then is in the original pack. The Internal Audit Annual Report and Audit Opinion. And Claire's going to run through those for us. Thank you, Claire.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. So I'm starting on page 68 or 8, depending on which version of the pack you have. So just to say that this is the Internal Audit Annual Report, which provides an overall opinion on the work that we've done during the year, which forms part of the annual governance statement when that comes through to the committee along with the accounts. So in summary, in section 2, we actually completed 86% of the work that we had planned to do for the year, which I think is a positive achievement given the slow start that we had at the start of the year due to COVID. So we've got 14% that we'll be carrying forward into 22-23. So during the year, we made 34 recommendations and 21% of those have already been implemented. And overall, I'm giving the control environment a satisfactory opinion. So just to take you through some of the detail of how I've arrived at that opinion. So just flipping forward to either page 13 or 73, depending on which version of the pack you've got. So starting in section 2, this just highlights how we identified the areas that we were going to look at. So we did a risk-based assessment to identify areas to include in the plan. And as you remember, we brought this to the committee in April. So we looked at, sorry, I've lost my place. Sorry, right, okay. So we looked at various pieces of work based on the risk assessments that we did at the time, and we were able to draw a conclusion based on the work that we did at paragraph 2.4 of a satisfactory level of control. So I'd just like to read that paragraph to you. So from the evaluation and testing undertaken during 21-22, there appears to be a satisfactory level of control. However, some control failings have been identified, which are being addressed by senior managers. Additionally, assurances have been given by the appropriate senior officers that controls are being improved. There are no significant control issues identified for inclusion in the annual governance statement. So over the page, on page 14 or 74, there's just details there of what we mean by those control weaknesses that are identified in that paragraph. So the first, which the committee will already be aware of, was a negative opinion on the general data protection regulations. So that audit identified 6 recommendations and had an unsatisfactory opinion. And the gaps there were around data protection training and developing performance monitoring. And we are planning to do further work in 22-23 as requested by the committee to make sure those issues are resolved. I thought it was also worth highlighting to the committee a neutral opinion on another piece of work that we did. So all the other opinions were positive. We had one negative opinion and one neutral opinion, and that was in relation to the safeguarding audit. So there were 4 medium recommendations and 3 low during that audit. And the improvements that we felt were needed were around ensuring that the appropriate material was available through the training programs for safeguarding and to make sure they were accessible and available for all staff. We will continue to monitor those recommendations throughout the coming year and obviously report those through to the committee as part of the regular quarterly updates. So in paragraph 3.1, then, in terms of the work that we identified to do during the year, we identified 22 audits and 4 of those were IT audits. At paragraph 3.2, we actually issued 10 reports during the year. And over the page, on page 15 or 75, you can see the opinions there. So 4 of the reports had good, positive opinions, 3 had satisfactory positive opinions. So there's that 1 neutral and that 1 unsatisfactory, which relates to the GDPR audit. I have included a table of the definitions. I think that's useful to include and perhaps something I should have brought to the committee's attention during the quarterly update. So hopefully that's helpful to see the details of how those opinions are arrived at. So over the page in paragraph 3.3, the 34 recommendations that were issued during the year, table 3 highlights that 1 of those was high, 21 were medium and 12 were low. And paragraph 3.4 below highlights where we are with those recommendations in terms of implementation. So 7 have already been implemented. There are 9 that have not been implemented, and there are 18 that have been issued but are not yet due. So over the page, on page 78 or 18, paragraph 3.5, you can see there are a number of recommendations there that relate to prior years. And what I'll be doing for the quarter 1 report is making sure that all those recommendations, either we've got an update on those ones, or if they're no longer needed, if due to the age of them, we'll make sure they are taken out. So in paragraph 4.1, as already mentioned, 86% of the work was either completed or underway by the end of March, and we've got 14% that we are actually carrying forward into next year's plan. So in terms of the summary there of the audits completed, so 10 were completed, 9 are in progress, and 3 are deferred into the following financial year. Over the page and on 79 or 19. At paragraph 6.2, I thought it was useful just to mention that internal audit are governed by standards. So we have public sector internal audit standards that say how we should conduct our work. And one of the things that standard says is that within every 5 years, we should have an annual assessment, an external assessment done of the work of the internal audit team. So those 5 years are up this year. So it is something that we'll have to plan to do this year to make sure we get that external assessment completed. And obviously that will be brought through to the committee in due course. Also, just to mention, there is training requirement for the Audit Standards Committee itself as part of the public sector internal audit standards. And it's something that, again, throughout the rest of this year, we'll look at training for the committee probably after the elections in May, just to make sure that the committee has got appropriate training and support. In the appendices, which are on page 81 and 82, you've got a summary there of all the reports that were issued during the year. and also the work in progress. And just to highlight that following completion of the report, the council tax and NNDR report was issued with another good opinion. So yeah, that's the information that's been used to come up with that overall satisfactory opinion on the control environment. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Sarah?
Just a minor one, I'll shout it. What's a without opinion assurance? Because you've not defined that one.
Right, okay. During the year, we did a review of the IT needs. So it was a report that was basically saying, what risks have we got because of IT? Based on the changing environment due to COVID, people were a bit more working from home, and we decided that actually to be able to decide what we needed to do from an IT perspective, we needed to do a summary report which just looked at the risks around IT so that we could define what we wanted to look at from an IT point of view. So that report was basically, the output of that report was to say, you need to look at these things. So it was a 3-year plan of what we needed to look at from an IT point of view. Sorry, I should have mentioned that when I went through. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Graham?
Thank you. The table 2 opinion definitions, are they just some general thing you've taken off the internet? Because we're not a city. It keeps referring to city council.
They are the opinions that we've used at Stoke City Council. And when we took over the service, we made a decision between myself and the head of finance to use those standard definitions going forward. Say we use them at Stoke, and we use them. I think previously you had 4 opinion definitions.
Just you could just change it from city council to.
Oh right, okay. Sorry, have I not done? Sorry, that's a mistake on my part. Sorry, I'll correct that for next time. Thank you. Yes, yeah. Sorry, I missed that one off. I'll make sure that's changed for the next version. Thank you.
Yeah.
Claire, I might be wrong here, and I apologize if I am. But when you started off, you talked about the planned work identified, and I thought you said 68% of the work had been done. It's actually 86. I'm not. It's just for the minutes, really. If it
She did say 86.
did she? I thought it said 68. Did she? No, my mistake. Forget it.
She might have said 68 once and then said 86 after.
I thought she said 68 and then 14%. But no, it's fair. I mean, said it.
Do we have any other questions then on this report? No? Okay. Right. Let's move on then. Item number 6, Claire again, the internal audit plan and charter for this forthcoming year. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So starting on page 84.
83.
Or 23.
So section 2. So identifies the approach that we took in identifying what work we were going to look at in terms of the audit plan for the year 22-23. Again, it just mentions that the work that we undertake will form an opinion, which will form part of the annual governance statement, so just shown the report that I've just presented. The other thing we need to do as well is under public sector internal audit standards, we are required to have an internal audit charter. So that charter sets out the way we work as an internal audit team, what access we have to records, how we plan our work. So I have produced that charter again for you, just so you've got it for information as Appendix B. But there's actually no changes from the charter that was included in the previous year. So it is the same charter. No need for any updates this year, but just so you've got it for information, it does set out the way we work, and we are required to produce one. So the key thing we've looked at in terms of pulling the plan together are the key risks that the council faces, so both strategic and operational, and obviously the way that risk impacts on the objectives of the council. So we undertake a full risk assessment as part of producing the audit plan, and we also ask all executive directors for their input into the plan as well. So for they have specific knowledge around areas of risk or areas of concern, or just areas where they want particular assurance. So we make sure that that's picked up as part of the plan. As well as that, I also do some horizon scanning just to say, what's going on generally in the public sector and whether there's anything we need to pick up from that point of view as well. Also mentioned in paragraph 2.8, we also make sure that as part of the work that we do, that we look at proactive and reactive fraud work and making sure that we detect matches from data matching exercises and making sure that we've got the controls in place around preventing the risk of fraud. So the plan itself is as Appendix A, which I'm happy to take you through, which is on page 89. So one of the things we do as part of the financial work that we do is undertake health check reviews. So you'll see there the number of audits that have got a sort of a small number of days, 8 days, because we've done a piece of work and we identified that there's a good level of control there. So we'll do more of a light touch approach there just to make sure that things are still operating as they should. Trade waste service was an audit that was identified that came from the service area. Under regen and development, we've got some grant assurance work there just to make sure that the grant money is being spent appropriately. We're also currently looking at a project governance audit just to make sure the framework is in place. And then we've also got some time set aside to look at major projects. This is one of the audits that we've deferred from the current year just because of COVID and delays around getting major project work off the ground. So we have deferred that and put that in this year's plan. Under the corporate area, we've got procurement and contract management, commercial investment governance, GDPR, which is the request of the Audit Standards Committee to do some further work in that area, as well as some work on the One Council programme. So that's a key strategic project for the council. And as already mentioned, based on the IT needs assessment that we did, we've identified IT assurance needs for the year, and there's probably a bit more on there than we would have in a standard year, but a couple of those have been deferred from the previous year. But obviously it's really important that we make sure we've got adequate IT assurance. So making sure that those audits are conducted during the year. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Do we have any questions on these? Okay. If there are no questions, then in that case, we need to, first of all, approve the internal audit plan for the forthcoming year, approve the internal audit charter, and agree to receive quarterly reports on the delivery of the assignments within the plan. Is everybody happy to approve all those three? Excellent. Thank you very much then. Okay, thank you, Claire. Item number 7 then, the corporate fraud arrangements, and Craig's going to whiz through these for us. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. The prevention of fraud and protection of the public purse is everybody's business. And it's important that all staff and members know how to recognise a fraud, how to prevent it, and more importantly, what to do if they suspect a fraud. We've got 4 policies in your pack: the anti-fraud and anti-corruption framework, fraud response plan, the whistleblowing policy, and the anti-money laundering policy. They're all designed to limit as far as possible the opportunities to commit fraudulent acts, enable such acts to be detected at an early stage, and to deal with any investigations in a prompt and thorough and professional manner. These documents all demonstrate that the Council proactively shows commitment to deterring fraud and corruption, and this is actively promoted throughout the organisation. The 4 policies are all approved annually as part of the Council's constitution. And in addition to those 4 policies, the Council also provides an independent confidential helpline via Protect for employees to openly raise any concerns that they have around fraud. In addition to that, the Council also continues to work with Stoke-on-Trent City Council under the Partnership Agreement for Counter-Fraud Services. And this service offers a full detection and investigation service, as well as work to prevent fraud and to encourage the sharing of learning and best practice with the council. That's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? No? All right, thank you, Craig. We'll carry on. We'll note that report. Item number 8, then the risk profiles for cyber risk and data breach. Simon's going to go through those for us. If you remember, these were the items we identified at the last meeting for further scrutiny. It's quite a lengthy report, and it's essentially a follow-up from the last meeting. So I'll leave Simon to run through those if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Yes, so sorry, it is a sizable report and it contains quite a breadth of information for you. So what I have done is I've produced a summary sheet that I can circulate after the meeting. And the summary sheet basically highlights that the pack you have, we've identified 23 cyber and data breach risks per se. Of those 23, 1 is rated as a high risk red, 9 are rated as an amber, 3 to 6 scoring, and 13 are rated as amber risks, as green risks, 4 to 6. Effectively, the report I'm going to circulate after the meeting, it'll give you a breakdown of each of the risks, each of the 23 risks, the initial risk rating, the number of key control measures we've identified and put in place. Your pack will go to some in depth in regards to what those key controls are. And then this table I'm going to give you gives you the final risk rating and the treatment per se. So whether we treat, whether we tolerate. And then the final column in this report gives you the risk owner. So they are officer names, or where there's a group of officers, a number of officers have been identified. So happy to circulate that report after the meeting, and happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Simon. Do we have any questions on these reports on the risk ratings? No.
It's hard to ask a detailed question about this, because I'm very happy when I read them. I'm very happy with how they're laid out. But I mean, what is the chances? I mean, the two big risks for me are hacking into our system and malicious software being introduced by a disgruntled employee. And how can this committee be assured that those two, we've got things in place that stop that happening? That's really, for me, the big question.
Yeah, I think I'd take you back to the reports, and I'd take you back to the mitigations, the measures we've put in place to try and address those, to reduce the risks of those particularly happening.
And you're very happy that we've got that?
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Okay. Do we have any other questions on these?
Just how's the report going to be circulated afterwards?
Have you copied it, Simon?
I've copied it, or I can send it you by email as well. Either or. I've got sufficient copies here if you want hard copy.
It's an A3 sheet, Sarah, so it's probably best if it's just handed out. We can just keep it with the notes. Okay, thanks, Simon. If we've got no further questions, we'll move on to item number 9 then, the risk management policy and strategy for the forthcoming year. Simon again, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual review of the risk management policy and strategy for 2022-23. There's no significant changes. In fact, the only changes that there are in both reports, strategy and policy, is date changes. So happy to take any questions if you have on the contents of the policy, on the contents of the strategy. It's a strategy you've all seen before.
Thank you, Simon. I believe there are no questions on it.
Thank you.
So, excellent. Thanks very much, Simon. Item number 10 then is the committee work plan. We'll just briefly look at that. It is to some extent academic for all of us because we don't even know whether we're here after the 5th of May. So does anybody have any comments to make on this at this particular time? No? Okay. Well, we've not been informed of any urgent business, so that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and let's hope we're all here next year. Well, next go. What do you call it? And we'll close the meeting here. Thank you.